as developers try to replace the Spanish Revival-style dwellings at 1456 Echo Park Avenue with new three-story homes. Residents are fighting to save 7 pre-World War II bungalows from demolition.
I think the bungalows are a rich piece of LA history, and I think as we move forward with development in the neighborhood, it's important to make sure that that's not at the cost of neighborhood character.
The bungalows are being considered for cultural historic monument status after a recent unanimous vote by the Los Angeles Cultural Heritage Commission.
I think we are very interested in turning our attention to some of these multifamily historic preservation issues, neighborhood conservation of historic multifamily forms.
The owner, Bixel House LLC, has filed an application with the City Planning Department to replace the 7 bungalows with 12 townhouses under the Small Lot Development Ordinance, which allows for more dense development of single-family homes.
They did review all the properties 2 years ago. It was not on the historical register, so we did everything right in trying to do something that would work and be really nice for the community. That being said, under the current circumstances, we will do everything that we can to try to work with the city and come up with something that works.
Some residents say their life seems like a roller coaster right now.
We don't know if this is getting demoed in March. We don't know if it's getting demoed in November. We don't know if the petitions that the city has filed is going to halt the demolition. And so to move is problematic, and to stay is problematic.
A dilemma that both the residents and owner will hopefully have answers to soon. I'm Rasha Goel for LA This Week.
Council District 13 is also introducing several motions to the City Council to address inconsistent zoning on Echo Park Avenue, and is also directing staff to report on preservation recommendations to save the bungalows. While the fate of one historic property remains in the air, another iconic LA home has secured its place in the record books as it lands on the National Registry of Historic Places. A father and son team get most of the credit, but so does Mother Nature. Gil Reyes has more from Silver Lake. Gil.
Well, Yana, what's long been considered to be a modernist masterpiece here in the city of Los Angeles is now a national treasure officially. We are talking about the VDL Research House located here at 2300 Silver Lake Boulevard. Today we talked to one of the architects, Dion Neutra, about this special recognition and also about what makes this house so special.
The home, built in 1932, is an early example of mid-century California design, still popular today. And inside, check out the Spanish 17th century style courtyard with trees wrapped around it, architecture and nature as one.
This project is like a time capsule of, our work, starting from the early 30s when my father was just getting started.
Famed architect Dion Neutra talking about his dad, the late Richard Neutra, who designed the house. In 1963, fire destroyed it. Father and son teamed up to rebuild, and now, decades later, their VDL Research House is named a National Historic Landmark.
Well, I'm, of course, extremely honored and excited about this. Getting the National Landmark designation is not an easy step.
Mirrors, glass doors, and reflective pools blended with the shimmer of the nearby Silver Lake Reservoir when it was filled to make the property feel organic, almost like it's breathing. But Dion Neutra says recent changes, like the draining of the lake, also trees and a light pole placed in front of the house, have reduced its appeal and should be removed.
This is now a landmark building of the United States of America. We should be expressing the design intent of the designers when we show it off to the public.
And there's nothing like being here. Sure, photos and videos are great, but you really have to visit to experience how sunlight, acoustics, and nature work like a symphony to create a masterpiece. In Silver Lake, I'm Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
The VDL Research House is open for tours on Saturdays. Log on to neutra-vdl.org for details. Well, speaking of history, imagine a black woman in the segregation era beating the odds to help get the first astronaut in space, or becoming the first supervisor for IBM at NASA, or its first African-American female engineer. These stories are true, and now they come alive in the movie Hidden Figures. Among the audience's 10,000 LA girls from low-income neighborhoods. Anna Marcos has more.
You have identification number?
NASA, son.
NASA.
So starts the unusual but true story of 3 African-American women who worked for NASA in the 60s and helped put the first astronaut into outer space. It's a story of empowerment, of firsts, and of rising above all odds, told by African-American women, a point of view we don't often see in our history books. But now it's being told in the movie Hidden Figures, and 10,000 girls of color in South LA are getting to see the film at a free screening at USC.
We're going to go watch Hidden Figures, which is a girl power, so as you see, it's many females and girls.
I think it's really great because I think that we're going to get really inspired in this movie.
These students are part of the Girls Build LA program and the LA Promise Fund, groups which give female middle and high school students a leg up in STEM careers, which stands for science, technology, engineering, and math.
In the STEM fields, only 25% of the workforce is female, with about 1 in 3% being Latina and Black. And so we really need to make certain that we increase the number of females and females of color.
And if anything can serve as inspiration, this movie, starring Taraji Henson, Octavia Spencer, and Janelle Monáe, can. It's partly the math done by Katherine Goebel-Johnson, the character played by Taraji Henson, that gets astronaut John Glenn into space and safely back to Earth.
I like her numbers.
Yet, these contributions appeared nowhere in the story of NASA until now.
I would like to be a lawyer.
And hopefully, the story will help these young women beat any obstacles in their paths to becoming whatever they dream of becoming. I'm Anna Marcos for LA This Week.
The event was hosted in partnership with the White House Initiative on Educational Excellence for Hispanics and African Americans and USC. Well, as you just saw, anyone can become a NASA engineer or even the next Bill Gates. But sometimes a little help can go a long way. That's why the City of LA recently sponsored a hackathon, inviting kids from disadvantaged areas to consider careers in computers. Gil Reyes shows us.
Yeah, I really love coding and being creative and, building apps and websites, helping other people.
Eleanor Trunov is among 300 young people gathered in groups to learn the basics of computer coding and app development. Their teachers today are tech industry professionals from companies like Snapchat and Google. The goal for these kids?
Hopefully get a good job in the future in technology, but most importantly, learn how to solve problems in their communities with technology.
Today's exercise is creating apps to help solve problems on campus, like littering, smoking, and school fights. Welcome to the Teens Exploring Technology, Hustle, and Code Hackathon. The mayor's office holds the event in South Los Angeles for a reason.
Certain areas of Los Angeles, such as South LA, Watts, Boyle Heights, Pacoima, and other areas where you don't have traditional technology company clusters. A lot of those clusters now are in downtown Los Angeles, Hollywood, and the West Side. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that the tech economy is spread all throughout the city, in every different area of the city.
Latinos and African Americans are underrepresented in technology fields. This hackathon aims to attract more of them to the industry. Student Edward Hernandez wants to create a video game one day.
But that game will secretly teach kids what to do in life, like life choices.
I think coding is important because it's the next language of the universe, pretty much. You can create anything, and so it's empowering for kids to know how to use these skills to create whatever they want for the future.
Solving problems, improving communities, and making tomorrow a better place. In South Los Angeles, I'm Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
More opportunities for teen techies are available. Log on to exploringtech.org for more info. Well, floats, bands, equestrian, and dance groups were all part of the grand celebration to honor the legacy of one civil rights leader. Rasha Goel has more on an event that drew a huge crowd.
Thousands of Angelenos of all ages lined up to celebrate the 32nd annual Kingdom Day Parade in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. near Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Western Avenue. This year's theme, Now More Than Ever, We All Must Work Together, was something many attendees said was appropriate.
Really, given recent events, MLK Day is kind of a opportunity to celebrate a black historical figure and to celebrate a unity of a community.
In 1983, legislation was signed to create Martin Luther King Jr. Day, making it a federal holiday. Then, in 1994, Congress designated the holiday as a National Day of Service.
Today is a celebration of our ability to come together and overcome hate, to overcome division, and to overcome inequity. Today we mark a point in history, but also we look at it as a guide to the future.
The parade was followed by a festival at Crenshaw Boulevard and Verdon Avenue, continuing the celebration of the dream Martin Luther King Jr. still inspires today.
We're celebrating Martin Luther King with the people in Los Angeles.
According to officials, the event is the nation's largest and oldest Martin Luther King Jr. Day celebration. I'm Rasha Goel for LA This Week.
The event is put on by the Congress of Racial Equality of California. Well, if your child goes to school in North Hollywood, he or she now has a new, safer way to get there after a tragic accident inspires action. Gil Reyes shows us.
Third graders from Bellingham Elementary School in North Hollywood test out their new neighborhood sidewalk on the way to class.
Because it's not safe to walk on the street because a car can crash a little kid.
And that's what happened here on Laurel Canyon and Archwood Street 6 years ago. A car ran over and killed 12-year-old Emily Ailman as she crossed the street. The accident also left her friend, another young girl, permanently disabled. The community urged the city to build the 1,700-foot sidewalk where a dirt path used to be. Bellingham's school principal says thanks.
It's incredibly important. If you see the other side of the street where there's just a dirt path, the students were actually walking through dirt or walking directly in the street to get to school, which was extremely dangerous for them.
North Hollywood Councilman Paul Krikorian spearheaded the effort through the Safe Routes to School program, funded by city, state, and federal governments. And the sidewalk isn't just for kids.
It's bad enough if you're a third grader, but it's really bad if you're a senior, or if you're somebody with a disability, or you're somebody else who has a mobility challenge and walking on essentially a trail.
I think that they're safer now.
In North Hollywood, I'm Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
The sidewalk also has 14 new access ramps for people using wheelchairs and strollers. Also, 37 new drought-tolerant trees. While a sea of demonstrators take to the streets in downtown LA to show solidarity for women's rights. A street in downtown's Fashion District is about to get a major makeover and celebrating the heroes of the Los Angeles Fire Department for their commitment to helping others. All these stories in City Beat. Observers said Women's March Los Angeles, which drew a massive crowd that filled downtown streets around Pershing Square, was the city's largest demonstration in nearly a decade. A massive crowd marched to City Hall in solidarity with the Women's March on Washington and similar events that were held in cities nationwide. The size of the crowd seemed to eclipse even the expectations of organizers, who estimated at one point that as many as 750,000 people showed up. Organizers stressed that the event was a nonpartisan and not a protest, but a celebration of human rights. The mission statement for the march read in part, "We stand together in solidarity for the protection of our rights, our safety, our health, and our families, recognizing that our vibrant and diverse communities are the strength of our country." City Councilmember Jose Huizar recently joined with other community groups for a groundbreaking on a much-needed $1.7 million streetscape improvement project on Los Angeles Street in downtown's Fashion District. With funding from Metro, the upgrade is part of Councilmember Huizar's Downtown LA Forward initiative. The plan and design was a collaboration among the Bureau of Street Services, the Board of Public Works, the Fashion District BID, and Councilmember Huizar's office. The improvements will be made on Los Angeles Street between 7th Street and Olympic Boulevard. A group of Los Angeles firefighters were honored at City Hall for volunteering their time last year to fight massive fires that swept through Israel. LA City firefighters worked hand in hand with Israeli first responders battling blazes in Israel last November.
Any chance we get to recognize the bravery and the heroism of our firefighters, we take that opportunity.
It was all worth it. This is all volunteer for us. Basically, the outcome was that we could participate in being with the firefighters and helping the people of Israel.
Well, it's a different spin on the musical Aladdin. Gil Reyes takes us behind the scenes of a bilingual edition of the Disney classic.
We are at rehearsals for a new version of Aladdin, co-presented by the office of LA City Council District 1.
In this town of Agrabah, everyone spoke Spanish and English. They were bilingual. When Jafar, the bad guy, got the hold of the lamp, he made a wish to divide the community so he could have more power. So everyone in the palace speaks only Spanish. Everyone in the pueblo only speaks English. So Jasmine and Aladdin cannot communicate.
Can the pair live happily ever after? You'll have to watch and find out in this dual language adaptation of Disney's Aladdin, now playing at Casa 0101 Theater in Boyle Heights. The musical premiered in Texas in 2009.
We presented it there at Far Texas at the high school, and we had over 1,000 people show up to that performance. It was really exciting, and it's so wonderful to see it now continuing on.
With LA-based players switching between English and Spanish throughout the show. Valeria Maldonado is one of the actresses cast as Princess Jasmine.
I have to sometimes remember that this is something new and that some people aren't used to changing languages. I think there's a big community here where we're all just used to doing this. So it feels really great to now bring it to an audience and see how they react.
For me, it's kind of been, just like a growing experience. Outside of here, I hardly speak any Spanish. So naturally, jumping into this process, it was kind of just like, okay, a whole new world. Será fantástico encontrar nadie que diga no, a dónde ir, aquellos que se aman.
The show continues through February 19th. In Boyle Heights, I'm Gil Reyes for LA This Week.
For tickets and showtimes, log on to casa0101.org. Well, celebrate Chinese culture during the New Year festival. Step into the land of wizards for a Harry Potter scavenger hunt. And if you love the movie Pitch Perfect, you won't want to miss this in this week's Things to Do. In celebrating over 100 years of tradition, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce of Los Angeles presents the 118th annual Golden Dragon Parade. With over thousands and thousands of individuals lining the parade route and thousands viewing the telecast each year, this colorful celebration along North Broadway in Chinatown has become the premier cultural event in the Southern California Asian American community. Since the mid-1980s, the Golden Dragon Parade has expanded to include almost 24 floats, multiple marching bands, government officials, various dignitaries, entertainers, local business leaders, and cultural groups. The parade theme emphasizes ethnic diversity, Chinese culture, and exposure to Chinese American businesses. The festival takes place Saturday, February 4th at 1 p.m. at 943 North Broadway. For more, visit lagoldendragonparade.com. Join Watson Adventures on a unique Harry Potter-themed scavenger hunt for kids 10 and up. Follow in the footsteps of young wizards on a field trip to the Getty Center in search of art that echoes characters, places, and enchanted objects in the famed Harry Potter books and movies. Keep your trusty wand handy as you track down a powerful sorceress, a Snape-like potions master, flying owls and dragons, Hagrid-like giants, centaurs, and unicorns like those you'd seen in the Forbidden Forest. This hunt is designed for kids and adults to do together. Go on an adventure on February 4th at the Getty Center. For more, visit watsonadventures.com. The Los Angeles Acapella Festival is a nonprofit music festival that gathers people from all over the world in an academic forum to celebrate, appreciate, and advance vocal music as an art form. The festival consists of educational workshops, a scholastic competition, and a professional showcase. The competition will feature top high school and collegiate groups going head-to-head in a 3-round performance format. Think Pitch Perfect. The festival is the perfect family event and an incredible weekend of live a cappella music. Visit la-af.com for details. And that's a look at some things to do. Well, that's going to do it for this edition. I'm Yana Kane from all of us here at LA This Week. Thanks for joining us. A reminder that you can catch us online at lacityview.org. You can also follow and like us on Facebook. We'll see you back here next week for more of LA This Week.
Ever notice how we no longer focus our attention on one thing at a time? We don't just walk or even just drive. We focus on so many different objects we don't notice the dangers ahead of us. We're a distracted society. We're blind to the importance of being safe, to the things that really matter. Blind to the things that could actually save our life. We're blind to everything surrounding us. Be aware. Move with care. Watch the road.
Graffiti removal? Call 311, the toll-free number for non-emergency services. 311, your one call to City Hall.
Hi, I'm Kevin from Chatsworth, offering you a taste of New Orleans since 1986. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35. Our city,
Good morning. It is Tuesday, January 31st. Want to welcome you to your Los Angeles City Council. Shh. Shh. This council meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Public is welcome. Madam Clerk, we do have a quorum. Would you please call a roll?
Blumenfield, Bonin, Buscaino, Cedillo, Englander, Herstassen, Weiser, Koretz, Krikoran, Martinez, O'Farrell, Price, Rue, Wesson. 12 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you. First order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mr. O'Farrell moves. Ms. Martinez seconds. Next.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Mr. Cedillo moves and Mr. Koretz seconds. Continue.
Mr. President, today is Tuesday and time for the flag salute.
Well, you know what? Why don't we all rise? And I'm going to have, I don't see Mr. Rue. Why don't I have Mr. Cedillo, if you would lead us in our flag salute today?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Made a day out of this. We did.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cedillo. Madam Clerk, why don't we go through the agenda at this time?
Mr. President, there's a request to continue items 1G, J, K, O, and P for 3 weeks to February 21st.
Okay, so without objection, that shall be the order. Continue.
The Department of Building and Safety recommends that the following items be received and filed. 1A, C, F, and S, as the liens have been paid in full. 1L, due to the receipt of a settlement payment. And 1R, as the lien has been rescinded.
Okay, so then without objection, that'll be the order. Continue.
Items 1 through 11 are items noticed for public hearing.
Do we have cards on any of these items?
There are cards on item 1.
Okay, let's hold item 1 and prepare to vote on the remaining items. Madam Clerk, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Continue.
Items 12 through 30 are items for which public hearings have been held.
Let's hold 30 members, 12 through 30. Any other holds? Mr. Koretz?
Item 27, please.
We'll hold item 27 for Mr. Koretz. Members? Then let's prepare to vote on the remaining items. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Continue.
Items 31 through 44 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so without objection, these items are now before us. Mr. Koretz?
If I could ask that 38 be called special as well.
38 for Mr. Koretz and Mr. Rue.
Number 43 special.
43 for Mr. Rue. Cards?
Cards on items 31, 32, 33, 35, 38, 41, 42, 43, and 44.
Okay, let's hold those items and then we'll vote on the remaining. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
Continue.
On the supplemental agenda, item 45 is an item for which a public hearing has not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, so then without objection, that item is now before us. Do we have any? Yes, Madam Clerk.
Yes, there are cards on item 45.
Okay, then that leaves us where?
That takes council back to presentations or items called special.
Okay. Mr. Cedillo, you.
Yep.
Okay, so then at this point, why don't I turn the the floor over to Mr. David Rue and Mr. Gilbert Cedillo.
Leading it right, Gil? You're leading the whole thing? How are you? I stand next to
Ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, doing the line dance first.
Okay, the other way. Bring them. Send in the lions. Send in the lions. Mr. President, we are being visited by some lions right now, so...
Well, the lions are welcome.
good. Wonderful. Let's see you Saturday too. Councilman King,
Ready?
Yep.
Thank you.
Mr. Controller?
How are you? Oh,
Good.
I love this.
Yes.
On
Whoever
the
did
speaking
this,
points.
What a nice touch.
I know.
Huh?
No corners, you know.
What a nice touch.
Nothing overlooked.
So some pretty nice orchids, David. We ready?
Steve, you want to come in or you want to stay right there? Okay, good.
Ready? Mr. President, you ready? Mr. President, let me introduce and announce, if we haven't noticed already, Happy Lunar New Year. We rang in the new year this past Saturday on January 28th, welcoming the Year of the Fire Rooster. The Year of the Fire Rooster is expected to bring positivity, progress, and good news, and we surely need it this year. Roosters are characterized as active, responsible, honest, and outspoken. Los Angeles boasts one of the most diverse Asian populations. We know that in the world, and LA's Chinatown hosts one of the oldest and most recognized New Year's celebration in America, drawing more than 150,000 for its festivities. Part of our rich Chinese New Year's tradition is the Miss Los Angeles Chinatown pageant, whose lovely court is with us here today. Where are they? Let's give them an applause. Also, on behalf of the City of Los Angeles, we are pleased to have with us the Honorable Liu Jian, Consul General of the People's Republic of China in Los Angeles, joining us for this celebration. I'm also honored to be part of this annual celebration, a very special holiday observed by Korea, Vietnam, Japan, Tibet, and many other countries. At this time, I'd like to hand this over to our colleague, the distinguished representative of his district, but also a hero to the Korean American community, the Honorable Councilmember David Ryu.
Thank you, Councilman Cedillo. Thank you for your kind words. And good morning, everyone. I am very proud to join Councilmember Gil Cedillo to celebrate one of the most important holidays in Asian culture. And you know, Councilmember Gil Cedillo mentioned many of the groups that are here with us today, but there are many other groups joining us, and I know I'm going to miss a few of them. We have the American Legion, the Korean War Veterans Division, the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, the OCA Greater Los Angeles, Asian Americans Advancing Justice Los Angeles, Korean American Coalition, the Council of Korean Churches in Southern California, and also the Consul General of the Republic of Japan will be joining us a little later today for the luncheon. And we also have representatives from the Consul General of the Republic of Indonesia and many, many other community leaders and community groups. And Lunar New Year, as Councilman Cedillo has said, is recognized by many countries in Asia, including Korea, China, Burma, Cambodia, Laos, Malaysia, Mongolia, Tibet, Nepal, Thailand, and Vietnam. And I think Controller Ron Galper is going to say Happy Lunar New Year in every single one of those languages, right?
Oh, yeah.
And this holiday marks the beginning of the Chinese lunar solar calendar in a time for self-reflection, a celebration of community, family, and good fortune, a message that is needed now more than ever. This past weekend, I joined thousands of Angelenos at LAX to protest the bigoted policies attacking our immigrant and refugee communities. An attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. In Los Angeles, we embrace people from all walks of life, no matter where you come from, which God you pray to, what you look like, or who you love. Everyone is welcome in Los Angeles. This Lunar New Year, I encourage you all to reflect and to take action. And remember that each and every one of you can make an impact in your community. Whether it's at the ballot box, social media, or even attending a demonstration, your voice will make that difference. This new year, let's pledge to make a lasting impact in our communities and move the dial of progress forward. Thank you and Happy New Year. Happy Year of the Fire Rooster. Thank you.
Our incomparable controller, Mr. Ron Galpern, in many languages.
Welcome, Mr. Controller.
Good morning. Great to be with you here, Mr. President and council members. Thanks so much for the opportunity and the honor and the pleasure to be with you. And Happy Lunar New Year. It's a time for celebration, for family, for food, of course, for decorations, for Thanksgiving, for greetings, for contemplating the future and the past, and for remembering the ancestors. How wonderful it is that we celebrate together here in City Hall, not just the many incredible Asian cultures that are here in Los Angeles, but people of all backgrounds together. It wasn't always so. As we celebrate Lunar New Year together, we must also, as the Lunar New Year calls upon us to do, remember the ancestors, especially in these times in which we are living. Let's go back to 1862 for a brief moment. It was then that the California legislature passed what was known as the Anti-Coulee Act, which supposedly sought to protect white American laborers from imposing a monthly tax, by imposing a monthly tax on Chinese immigrants seeking to do business in the state of California. Sound vaguely familiar? Then in 1882, Congress passed and the President signed the Chinese Exclusion Act, prohibiting all immigration of Chinese laborers. The Chinese Exclusion Act was the first law implemented to prevent a specific ethnic group from immigrating to the United States, but apparently was not the last. It wasn't repealed until 1943. But alas, 2017 is the year of the rooster. The rooster's crow is what awakens us, ever present every day, to wipe away our sleep, to arise to the day in action. It represents punctuality, precision, always being on time, being like clockwork. I like that as controller. And roosters remind us that each day is a new day, one in which we're called upon to build a better world. Something we seek to do here in Los Angeles. And with almost 500,000 Asian residents in the city of LA alone, now more than ever, we must celebrate the immigrant fabric that makes up America. We value the vital accomplishments that immigrants make to our city every day, and we will continue to support, protect, and to celebrate the many contributions that all of our immigrants and immigrant communities make to our vibrant city. And so my wish for this Lunar New Year is that we recall our past, that we celebrate our present, and that we build our future together in this great city of angels. May this year be a year of good fortune, of prosperity, of peace for all. Thank you so very much. Thank you, Council Members Ruth and Cedillo.
Thank you. Thank you again, everyone, for indulging us and joining us here. Colleagues, please join us on the Spring Street forecourt. At the close of today's session, we have a very, very special luncheon, and I am positive that each and every one of us will enjoy it. Again, Happy New Year to all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Who's got the certificate?
Ready? How many folks do you need from here, and then I'll invite everybody else to go back out. Okay, perfect.
Give them one more round of applause. Thank you guys, all of you, for coming in, and Happy New Year. We'll move now to general public comment and the multi-portion comment section. So I want to call up Mr. Walsh. Can we pull up John Walsh? Mr. Walsh, you have 1A, 32A, 33, 35, 38, 41, 43, 44, 45. Then your general public comment.
John Walsh, blogging at HollywoodHighlands.org or J. Walsh Confidential, tweeting at Hollywood Dems. And this is number one, you're doing a good job here in building and safety. When you do a good job, I'm not one of those white guys saying, oh, you're all a bunch of crooks and you could go to hell. No, when you do a good job, I'm the first one to say you're doing a good job. And as a renter, I don't have any complaints concerning what you're doing. Number 32, this concerns rent escrow account. Again, excellent job. Number 35. 35 is a donation of metal storage lockers to the LAPD. The LAPD, what is this for? Stolen weapons? We don't need to give the LAPD anything they want. Let them pay for it out of their own damn budget. Number 38, although they are better than the Chicago police, I must say that. Number 38, establishing the city's position of Scott Pruitt. Forget about Scott Pruitt. Forget about Washington, D.C. You have no control over that. This microphone has more control over Donald Trump. Let's stay here. Forget about Scott Pruitt. Number 41, this is a permanent supportive housing project. This is $150,000 down whenever they want money, they say affordable housing. 43, this is Los Angeles Planning Commission conditional use permits to allow the sale and dispensing of a full line of alcoholic beverages. This city has the highest rate of drunk driving arrests in America. And it's because you never turn down a liquor license. You always give it. And the blood of every person hit by a hit-and-run driver is on your hands and on the hands of the LA Times for not doing any stories about this. 41, $100,000 grant, $100,000 here, $100,000 there. After a while, it begins to add up. See those yellow bags over there? Those are illegal gifts to the city city councilman. And number 45 is the not Hollywood Highlands.
Can we give him his general public comment minute?
Okay. Number one, look how filthy this place is. I mean, it's yes on S, measure S. I just want all the Jews, and my mother's name was Bertha Berger, Hungarian Jew. What they're going to do, because the neighborhoods east of La Brea are filled. They've got 10 gigantic projects they're going to put in once if S fails. If S fails, all it does is put a 2-year pause in the gigantic building of skyscrapers in the city. And all this bullshit about it's going to give people jobs. I live next door to a gigantic project. I don't see one black face working there, and I see 0 women. It'll give jobs to whites and Hispanics.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. If I could have Miss Donna Pierman, followed by Ms. McAllister. Okay, before you start, Ms. Pearman, let's vote, Madam Clerk, let's vote on items 32, 33, 35, and 45. So let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, come forward, Ms. Pearman. You have items 1A and 31.
And I just put in 38.
And 38, so go ahead. Give her another minute.
Number one, I'm talking about general number one, not just 1A. How dare the city council spend so much to make it a sanctuary city, spend so much property taxes and homeless, yet you don't care about people with liens on their property. Democrats hate property owners to make all these silly regulations to get a lien, put fines if late, can't pay it back. Let's help the Americans and naturalized citizens breaks. Don't get revenue that way to spend it on your pet projects. So I don't like number one, liens. And number 31 is about that electrical. Let me get to that spot. Yeah, here we're going to spend exempt electrical vehicle charging stations for the right-of-way. I don't see why we need to spend so much on these electrical. In the meantime, they make it difficult for the people who are going on buses with the MTA. They make it difficult for to be able to get a reduced fare. I had to wait months, and now I even have to wait longer because I didn't know that you were supposed to fill in a simple little spot. So, and in the meantime, they spend all this money on this electrical vehicles. That's something that Garcetti loves so much with his, so that I don't like that. And number 38. Number 38 is where they want to oppose the President General Donald J. Trump's nomination of Scott Pruitt. I don't know much about Scott Pruitt, but if it's somebody that Donald Trump likes and there's something, then he must be good. So I'm tired of all these Democrats just automatically, if it's Donald Trump, that must be bad, and they're going against anything that he says. So I'm against, I'm for the nomination for Donald Trump, and I'm against your opposition to it. And can I start on public comment?
Could you give her minute for general public comment? Thank
Okay.
you.
Vote yes on S, number S. Stop building all those affordable housing costing homeowners so much. We need to make it a sales tax instead. We need to stop bringing in Syrian refugees until we can see if they're peaceful or not. If they want Sharia law to be brought in, we can't have that. We're going to lose money being a sanctuary city. We'll increase our fees and our taxes, and we'll lose our needed services for the needy and disabled. President Obama, Carter, and Bill Clinton tried to stop immigration as well. It's not okay for Republicans to do it, but okay for Democrats. It's a double standard. America first. Many here need help. Many races of people have to wait a long time to get help. Like the MTA disabled passes, takes months to get. Even doctors don't know what they wanted, so they refused it. But then they accepted it when they come up with a silly little code. We need to help the disabled. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. And your items are 1, 31, 42, 44, and then your general public comment.
Okay. Here I'm looking at the alcohol beverages, and it looks like it's the Central Avenue fair that I go to just about every year. We don't have any drunk people running around there, and we don't need any alcohol being sold over there, okay? It's a once-a-year event. Keep the alcohol out. I have a problem with you taking this money and putting it into, you're taking money and putting it into something that we don't know anything about. Item 41, over $500,000. You're putting it into permanent supportive housing. Permanent supportive housing needs 30 to 40 million. So you're taking 500,000, tells me it's going in somebody's pocket. Okay, so quit funneling money into charities and into your pockets. I want to congratulate my president, President Donald Trump. We worked hard to get him in office. I want to look at item 1 because these are the people who are losing their houses. And I know that there's a conspiracy here in not just California and Los Angeles, but across the nation, taking people's homes, going into neighborhoods, sending spies into people's homes, looking for little major or not minor violations, and taking their homes and selling them to the gangs and the mob and everybody else, and you pocketing some money. So we want the feds to come up in Los Angeles. We need the feds here because of SB 1322. We need to protect our children. I haven't heard any one of you talk against SB, Senate Bill 1322, where it is now legal to rape children from minors to 18 years old. I haven't heard one of you say one word. Jerry Brown signed it. It went into effect January 1st, 2017, where children can now be raped and sodomized by adults. If a child is caught on the street, the bill says don't arrest a child, let him prostitute.
Mr. President,
I don't know
the
any
speaker
children that
seems
want to
to
be
have
raped.
veered off
okay?
topic.
That is part of this here. This is about education and our children. Anything about our children, it should be allowed.
Get back on topic.
I'm on topic, and that really bothers me because I'm a school teacher. Okay, so leave our children alone. You want to rape somebody, rape your own children. Okay, now, as far as anchor babies, we need to get these illegals out of here. The illegal aliens, the anchors, and the
So now,
dreamers.
you know what? Let's give Ms. McAllister her general public comment so she can speak on just about any item. So go right ahead.
We need to get these illegals out of here. Chinese and Koreans are the second largest illegal alien population in California and in this country, behind Mexicans. We need them out of here. If you think you're crying because President Trump held up some illegals, H-1B visa people in the airport, you're going to urinate on yourself when we start deporting these illegal aliens. See, we know why they're here. They're here for pedophilia, to rape their children, and they're here for these low-paying jobs. That's going to end. Now, we got 35 million of them in this country, and they're gonna come up on us when we start deporting them. But guess what? We're gonna shoot them back, and we have to drone them. We're gonna get them out this nation. Many of us gonna die in the process, but they're coming out of here. And I know they're not gonna leave peacefully, just like they're at the airport. But we're gonna bomb their rear ends out of this nation. This is our country. This is America.
Just keep it down. Just shh. Look. I understand. We on this council understand how you feel and we support you. But we allow everybody to get up here and speak their mind. So let's just be respectful, even though it's a challenge to be respectful sometimes. Okay, let me get a couple of just general public comments. Who do I have on the queue? Jacqueline Richardson. Jack, quit. Let's don't disrupt. Let me get Jacqueline Richardson and Leah Garland. Please come forward.
And Mr. President, as the speakers make their way
Ms.
forward.
Garland, you can come right up.
Hi, thank you. I'd like to speak to item number 38. Scott Pruitt.
No, this is general public
This is
comment.
general?
You're Ms. Garland?
Yes, I am.
No, so you can't speak on a specific item. Just general public
Just general-
comment.
Okay, well, just in general, that I'll say that look, you guys have more power than we do. Our power is simply to just make phone calls to a president whose phone line has been shut down. It says contact my businesses. So I did. I contacted his businesses, and they hung up on me. So where does the public get to have a voice? We go to marches, and we're tired, and we're hoarse. So because you guys have more power than we do, I beg you, please, stand up to Trump's climate-denying nominees. It's terrifying when he wants to put people like Scott Pruitt, I'm not speaking just to number 38, but in general, when he wants to put Scott Pruitt in charge of the EPA, it's like a cruel joke. He wants to gut the EPA. It's like his humor of trying to stop the EPA from interrupting oil and gas industry is to appoint someone who has a record of not opposing the oil and gas industry. He does this with...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Richardson?
I don't know what I'm talking about. We need to build a wall in Alaska where the holographs and some mean people and the biggest seas that ever have come into the United States come through. Donald Trump must have come through that wall also, must have come that way also.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Okay, now let's vote on items 31, 41, 42, and 44. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, and that should conclude general public comment, correct, Madam Clerk?
Correct.
Okay, so now we'll move forward on the items on today's agenda.
And Mr. President, there are requests on item 1M and 1N to continue those for 3 weeks to February 21.
Okay, so without objection, that'll be the order. Mr. Koretz, would you like to begin the conversation on item 38?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I think we're at a tipping point on climate change. NASA has said that 2016 was the hottest year on record, eclipsing 2015, which was the hottest year on record, eclipsing 2014, which was the hottest year on record. According to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there were 12 individual weather events and climate disasters with costs exceeding $1 billion each. The overall flood loss driven by 6,000-year rain events was approximately $17 billion. And those are real dollars and real people being impacted, and we all pay for it with our own tax dollars. So, of course, it makes perfect sense for Donald Trump to nominate a climate change denier and someone who has advocated for dismantling the Environmental Protection Agency as the person that will lead the EPA. He has attacked protections on air, on water, on climate, and when our fierce new Senator Kamala Harris was grilling him during his confirmation hearing, he wouldn't commit to protecting California's emission standards waiver, which allows us to have stronger emission regulations than anyone else. So I was here, many of us were here a little over a week ago with 750,000 of our closest friends at the Women's March. And we were there to take a strong stand in the face of these assaults on women's rights and immigrants' rights and human rights and environmental protection and common decency. Scott Pruitt, as director of the EPA, will endanger us all, and frankly, nothing less than the future of the human race, perhaps, is at stake. So we must oppose him, and I ask you all for your aye vote.
Thank you. Before I call on the next member, I do have some public comment cards. So, Ms. Garland, I'm going to have you come up first, and now you can speak on 38. And after you, Ann, I thought I saw you earlier, Annie Schefter, Daryl Gale, and Naomi Curlin. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. It's by fate that we were born when we are. And we're born in a moment where we have to do everything we can to curb the effects of climate change. Our time is running out. This is the moment. This is the moment to reject Scott Pruitt to head the EPA. Scott Pruitt is trying to deny climate change. His own article from the National Review this year, he tries to promote denial. He says, scientists continue to disagree about the degree and extent of global warming. I don't know that 97% of scientists is much of a disagreement about climate change and its connection to action of mankind. That debate, that climate change even exists, should be encouraged in classrooms, public forums, and the halls of Congress. He wants to encourage doubt.
Thank you. Ann, come forward. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Ann Job from the Sylmar Neighborhood Council, speaking for myself. I just want to thank this body for taking on the Pruitt issue and to let you know how dependent we are on this body, on the city of Los Angeles, to speak for us with regard to all the things that are going to be going on in Washington that we foresee. You are our mentors. You are our supporters. You speak for us, and we depend on you enormously. With regard to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to speak on this street vending, but we're all in this together. We are all in needing your support. Street vending, I thank you for decriminalizing that.
Thank you, Ann. Good to see you. And before I call the next speaker, we've been joined by our former city attorney, Rocky Delgadillo. Can we give him a round of applause? Ray, wave to the folk. Right? Welcome home. Next speaker, please come forward.
Thank you very much, City Council, for considering this Scott Pruitt problem.
And your name?
I'm Daryl Gale. I live in downtown Los Angeles. The U.S. Geological Service put out a paper about the new high level of earthquakes in Oklahoma, where Scott Pruitt formerly was working. He doesn't seem to mind that the city and many of the smaller cities all over Oklahoma are being shook constantly by injection well earthquakes. That's the produced water when an oil well is drilled, and then they just put that water back into the ground. The people are having constant earthquakes. If Scott Pruitt doesn't care about the people in his own state, what is he going to do running the EPA about the whole country? So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm looking for Naomi Curlin, and Annie Shifter. Are you here? Naomi?
She's here.
Please come forward because I'm getting ready to close public comment. Yes, you are.
Hi, my name's Ann Stifter. I thank you for standing here today. I'm here to speak in regards to the Environmental Protection Agency. I just want to give to everyone in this room a few questions. How is it that we want to react? How is it that we want to feel? How is it that we want to be in this world? And how is it that we want to continue to conduct the health of our planet, the atmosphere, the earth we walk on, and the lives that we all live? This is our place.
Thank you. Thank you. So are you Naomi Curlin?
Naomi Curlin, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Scott Pruitt is skeptical about climate change and has sued to fight the EPA's Clean Power Plan and regulations on methane emissions, mercury and other toxins, and atmospheric pollutants. He is very clearly not a person who should be in charge of the agency that's meant to protect our environment. This is a city whose constituents care deeply about our natural environment. In the past election, California upheld the plastic bag ban, and LA voted in favor of a parks tax and a tax to expand light rail and bike paths. Last year, this council unanimously passed the Clean Up, Green Up ordinance, and communities as near as Long Beach and as far as Minneapolis are looking to replicate it in their cities. When Los Angeles speaks up, the nation listens. Let's send a clear message. We care about our natural environment and how lack of regulation affects our public health, and do not support the appointment of Scott Pruitt for EPA or any climate change deniers in the Trump administration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes public comment, Madam Clerk, on this item. I'd like to call on Mr. Weezer at this time.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to first thank Mr. Koretz and all the co-signers on this motion. And as was said by public speakers and Mr. Koretz, this appointment is dangerous for the city of Los Angeles. The city of Los Angeles is going in opposite direction as this Trump administration when it comes to environmental policy. We are getting off of coal by the year 2025. We've increased our portfolio and alternative energy that we provide by going more to solar panels and other forms of alternative energy. With this appointment, it would put us in a different direction from what this city has decided to do to protect our environment. Not only that, but when you look at some of the most vulnerable communities in our city, they depend on federal regulations to protect them, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. And with an appointment like this, our vulnerable communities will be more in danger of not having any protection. We know those quite well in Boyle Heights, where we're fighting an Exide plant, a recycling battery plant, that no one was there to protect the community, until the EPA stepped in and did something with the Clean Air Act. And also on top of that, there were some leaked memos from the Trump administration transition team that clearly said that they intend to significantly cut the EPA's staff and budget. They want to kill this agency. We should not allow them to do that. The city of Los Angeles needs to speak loudly and clearly that this is a terrible idea that not only will go in the opposite direction of what the city is doing in terms of policy, but it will affect people's lives, and the protections they have depended on for years will vanish. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not only one of the items that this Trump administration is doing that is antithetical to what the city of Los Angeles is doing, but it's inhumane. I ask that we strongly support this. And Mr. Koretz, if you could accept a friendly amendment that the city oppose any significant cuts to the EPA staff, budget, or authority as this moves forward, not only to oppose it, so that we also protect the agency itself and not only just oppose this appointment. If that could be a friendly amendment as well, Mr. Koretz.
And of course, I'd be happy to accept that as a very friendly amendment.
Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mr. Koretz, for the motion, and Mr. Weezer for the excellent amendment and expansion of the scope of this. I am so honored to stand here and support this. This is an absolutely necessary thing to do. I was, along with Ms. Martinez and Mr. Rue and Mr. O'Farrell and a number of others, thrilled to be part of the Women's March on January 21st, where hundreds of thousands of Angelenos came out and said, what is happening in Washington is not the America we believe in and does not reflect the values of this state and of this city. And I was really glad to join thousands of Angelenos over the weekend at the largest demonstration Los Angeles International Airport has ever seen, to stand up and to resist what the administration is trying to do to immigrants and to refugees and to the very fabric of American society. This nominee for the EPA is part of a comprehensive, all-out assault on things that we hold dear. This administration is continually, agency after agency, department after department, appointing people whose mission is to undermine, to deconstruct, to destroy, and to blow up those departments. And we cannot tolerate that. We particularly cannot tolerate it on this issue of the environment. This is an assault, make no mistake about it, on our society. This is an assault on our children. What this administration is trying to do to environmental regulations is going to make the world significantly less safe for our children, and we cannot tolerate that. This is a city that has stood up and said we want 100% renewable energy. This is a city that has stood up and said we do not want fracking. This is a state that has stood up and said we want higher environmental standards than the rest of the country. We are going to set the standard and show the world how it can be done. And we are going to be engaged for the next 4 years in a political war with this administration about what California believes in and what Los Angeles believes in. They're going to try to undermine the leadership we're showing and the progress we've been making. And we will resist and we will prevail.
Mr. O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's also keep in mind that the state of California for decades has enjoyed what's called an administrative exemption from the Environmental Protection Agency and the feds so that we can craft our own more robust environmental protections across the entire state. That exemption is at risk just with this very administration. And this nominee to head our Environmental Protection Agency has indicated that they will eliminate that administrative exemption that the entire state enjoys. We have historically been a leader on the environment from the state level to the local level. This administration threatens to completely remove that ability for us to continue in that way that the rest of the country follows. We are the example. We mustn't let that occur either. It is essential that his nomination be denied and that we get a commitment from the administration that they will not remove that administrative exemption so that we can craft our own environmental rules for the state of California. And that should be our make or break line in the sand. So this message at the local level from Los Angeles sends a strong signal. We need our state leaders to be in solidarity with that position, and we need to hold firm so that we do not lose that ability to craft our own environmental laws for the state of California. And I applaud my colleagues for introducing this, and I wholeheartedly support. Let's stand together for our environment and for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bloomingfield.
Just want to add my voice to the chorus on this. Thank you, Mr. Koretz, for bringing this up. EPA is already freezing federal grants to California. This is getting very real, very fast, as we've seen. This appointment, like so many of these other appointments, are so Orwellian in nature. It's almost as if he went to figure out who is the opposite to the mission of that entity. And when it comes to the environment, picking someone who has been just an opponent of the environment for so many years is not only telling, but it's frightening. But we, as a city of Los Angeles, will stand up. We will be a beacon of truth. We will continue our care for the environment, and we will have, if we have to lead this country from the West Coast, we will do that. And opposing this is just one step in that process. So I urge support for the resolution.
Mr. Englander.
Thank you. Colleagues, I knew before I walked in this morning exactly how I was going to vote on this, but I didn't know if I was going to speak on it or not. But I feel that I need to. I got to say something. Because you all talked about values and regulations, renewable energy, standards, leadership. To me, and as the only Republican in the room on this horseshoe, this is actually more important than that to me. Yesterday was the 11th anniversary of my sister's death. She was 40 years old. She died of asthma. We were, born and raised out here. We used to have smog days where we had to stay inside and we couldn't play. They said they were smog alerts. And my sister suffered from that. After she had her asthma attack and stopped breathing for 4 minutes, went into a coma, came out with permanent brain damage. My family, we took care of her for 10 years, spoon-feeding her. She was a school teacher for Head Start. She was dreaming of getting married and having her own kids. This appointment is negligent and criminal. And it goes beyond just values and standards and regulations. My district suffered from not having regulations because of the gas leak. And they're talking about reopening that facility where 20,000 people moved out of their homes, where I saw child after child being sick with rashes and nosebleeds. We can't go back. I know the vote's going to be unanimous. I know what we need to do, but a resolution isn't enough. We need to stand up and we need to fight, because this is wrong. And I just wanted to share my personal feelings and support for all of you doing this, and I really, truly appreciate it. It's heartfelt. Thank you.
Mr. Englander, my dear friend and brother, we do want to thank you for sharing. Sometimes it takes something like you said to really put a bow on a moment, to dot that I and cross that T, and to make it real and to bring it home, and all of us felt where you were coming from. And so I personally thank you for sharing. So with that said, let's vote on this item. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
It is unanimous. It passes. Okay, what I want to do now is let's move, Madam Clerk, as we're getting lettuce or cabbage removed. Let's move to item 30. The public comment on this item has already been satisfied, but I think that based on the importance of the item, Mr. City Attorney, I'm going to reopen it for a limited amount of time. So I'm looking at 15 minutes. I'm going to ask a minute each, and I'm going to ask individuals that are opposed. Would you raise your hand? Okay, did you fill out a card? Please come forward.
And Mr. President, as the speakers come forward, Amending Motion 30A has been posted and circulated.
Okay, so now, Mike, wait a minute. Michael, right? You're the president of, and you guys did a community impact statement.
Yes.
Sergeant, when we do that, just so everybody knows, when our neighborhood councils put this on the agenda and they debate it and they send a community impact statement to the council, then we afford them the opportunity to come to the center table with our cabbage, and you'll be given up to 5 minutes, sir. And I appreciate that the neighborhood council took the time to actually do this. So we'll start out with you, and then we'll continue our public comment on this issue. Go right ahead.
Presently, and Gary is our past president. Gary's going to start. Won't
Gary.
take too much time.
Gary Agus, I'm Valley Neighborhood Council. How wide does sidewalk have to be for a cart, vendor, and 2 customers, and still maintain enough space for a person in a wheelchair to get by? ADA problem safety position. How many streets in the Sun Valley, San Fernando Valley, Sun Valley, are wide enough to accommodate the above? Sidewalks in Sun Valley are designed for two people walking side by side, not for commerce. Who's going to design the carts? No canopy should be allowed. If vendors work at night without proper lighting, we have a safety issue. Vendors should only be allowed on streets 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Involving permits. Are permits awarded based on citizenship? Citizens versus non-citizens? Green cards versus undocumented? At December 12 meeting, it was said and repeated that there are 10,000 vendors selling food in L.A., and all told 30 to 50,000 street vendors in Los Angeles. How many permits will be issued, and what categories will be issued? Will permit holders always have to be physically present with their carts? Will permits be issued to the owner of the cart, and will he/she be allowed to sublet that cart to another person so they can operate 2 7-hour shifts? Will permit holders with cards be able to form a cooperative and allow paid employees to operate the carts? If businesses have allowed vendors to sell on their street, be able to revoke their permission if they have problems with the vendors? Thank you.
Regarding
Okay,
economics, Sun Valley has a number of mom-and-pop restaurants that are marginal. If we allow food vendors 2 per street near these restaurants, you could be putting them out of business. No street vendors should be allowed on residential streets. Most sidewalks on our residential streets are barely able to accommodate 2 people walking side by side. There's comparisons to New York. New York sidewalks are very wide and designed to transport large numbers of people walking down the street. As far as enforcement, we must have an effective and a proactive enforcement agency. They have to be enough personnel to patrol from San Pedro to Porter Ranch. They have to have headquarters in many places, and they need necessary transport for personnel and trucks to confiscate carts. Such an agency would have to have enough personnel and vehicles to patrol 460 square miles that goes from San Pedro to Porter Ranch. The enforcement agency has to be available and working 24 hours a day. Sun Valley has street vendors setting up kitchens, and they keep them set up till 3 o'clock in the morning. We also need a large number of people in a licensing department that will keep track of violations after all licenses are issued. As far as sanitation, how do food vendors and all vendors go to the bathroom and wash their hands? Where will the food be prepared? Community kitchens that have on-site health inspectors 24 hours a day is not a bad idea. Vending sites must be left clean and sanitary after each day with cleaning throughout the day, and trash receptacles must be provided. Thank you for your time, and I hope you'll address some of these issues.
Thank you. Thank you both for coming down. And thank the Neighborhood Council on our behalf. Carol Schatz. Carol.
Carol Schatz, president of the Downtown Center BID and with the Coalition to Save Small Business. LA has made great strides in the last 20 years, becoming a truly world-class city, gaining attention from all over the world. DTLA has played a big part in that transformation, as you all know. A fair, reasonable, balanced street vending program can enhance this status or undercut it. We appreciate the efforts by Council members Buscaino and Price to create a workable framework, but more needs to be done. We must assure that everyone can make a living under the framework, not just vendors at the expense of small business. And we must ensure that there is greater flexibility given to communities to say yes, no, or not this way, and an easier process to exempt themselves from vending. No major city in the United States allows for citywide vending.
Thank you. So now I'm looking for Claire.
1 second.
No. Claire Fox, Gonzalo Solis, Mike Dennis, please come forward. Come on, when I call you, come forward. Alex Sashiyama, please come forward. Go right ahead, sir. Identify yourself.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Gonzalo Solís. Sí, buenos días, mi nombre es Gonzalo Solís.
Good morning. My name is Gonzalo Solis.
Somos vendedores del Valle de San Fernando
We are street vendors in the San Fernando Valley,
y venimos para solicitar su apoyo
and we're here requesting your support
para que nos den los permisos
so that we are allowed to get permits
de vender en los parques y en las aceras
in order to be street vendors on the sidewalks and on the parks.
para pues el sostenimiento que tenemos para nuestras familias
That is our economical way of surviving and supporting our families.
y que de aprobarse nos den un precio justo
And if approved, we also ask for praise for a just and fair cost of the permit.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. Next speaker. Can we please keep it down? The quieter you are, the more people get a chance to talk. So please just keep it down. Yes, sir. Identify yourself.
Mike Dennis. Thank you for the time. I'm here with the LA Street Vendor Campaign and the East LA Community Corporation. This has been a long time coming. We've been working on this policy for a little over 4 years now. We're excited to see that the council is finally moving. We're living in perilous times, what's happening with the Trump administration. So decriminalization is absolutely necessary and needs to happen immediately. We also want to make sure that any vending policy is a citywide policy. Opposition wants you to think that individual neighborhoods need special tools. There's already tools included in the framework that's being proposed, and we don't want a small group controlling the decisions for the rest of the entire city. We also want to make sure that 2 vendors per block is something that's reconsidered. It just doesn't work when you're looking at the city's blocks. It's a very diverse city, and many blocks can accommodate more vendors per space. And the last thing I'll say is that the requirement to include permission slips by adjacent property owners.
Thank you. Thank you. So if I could get the next speaker. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Is this working? Thank you. My name is Alex Sasayama, and I'm a resident of the Fashion District in downtown Los Angeles. My wife and I moved to DTLA because we love the extraordinary diversity of the city and wanted to be in the heart of it, a city where culture is not only shaped by Michelin-starred chefs, but by vendors selling fresh fruit on street corners. I'm also the child of immigrants. My mother left Argentina at the start of the Dirty War, and my father was from Japan, who not too long ago would have been forced into an internment camp despite his citizenship. The experience of my parents is part of the same storyline as the immigrants, refugees, and even legal residents currently being targeted for exclusion and deportation. And the decisions we make today to welcome or turn our backs on them will be judged by history in the same way as our past. I would not be here today if my parents didn't have the opportunity to hustle to make ends meet, to not just be allowed into this country, but to have the opportunity to unleash their full capacity to realize themselves and contribute to our economy and citywide. This is why I support the legalization of street vending citywide. I consider it my responsibility as both the seller.
Thank you. So if I could have the next speaker come forward, identify yourself.
Good morning, council members. My name is Claire Fox. I'm with the LA Food Policy Council, and I just want to connect the dots between this conversation and the one that you just previously had. I was actually very, very moved by your comments with regards to the nominee to the EPA, and I just want to contextualize the legalization of street vending in this larger national conversation. I have been very honored to join forces in a different capacity with CLUE, Clergy and Lady for United for Economic Justice, and a group of women clergy who are really understanding that legalizing street vending is a women's economic justice issue. It's a women's immigrant justice issue. And so we ask you today to advance this, to think critically about how we can uplift our communities through the legalization and decriminalization of street vending. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I can get Susan Bursk and Mike Russell and Robert Newman to come forward, please. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Mr. President. Honorable council members. I'm Susan Burst, Government Committee Liaison for the Century City BID, former President and CEO of the Century City Chamber of Commerce. While we support areas in the city of LA that are in need of sidewalk vendors, we don't believe one size fits all. Century City has a P-BID, and there are tremendous costs that are mandated on property owners, such as maintaining sidewalks, public areas, landscape, and public safety. We also have major construction projects taking place in our community, including the construction of the Purple Line that will be starting this year and will reduce accessible sidewalks. As you consider these proposals to allow street vending, please also consider the health of the local business community and provide a mechanism to evaluate where street vending is an asset to a community or where it will erode the local economy and quality of life, and consider perhaps greater flexibility to communities to opt out of this proposal. Street vending may be appropriate to many areas of the city, but not in all communities. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Russell.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning, City Council. My name is Michael Russell. I'm the Executive Director of the Wilshire Center Business Improvement District. On behalf of the Board of Directors and over 1,000 property owners in the Wilshire Center District of K-Town, we want to thank the Council for working so diligently on this. We want to thank Weezar, Price, Buscaino, and the entire Council for dealing with this very complex issue. But there are a lot of details that we believe still need to be ironed out. The Board of Directors of the Wilshire Center Business Improvement District does believe in decriminalization of street vending. However, we do believe in allowing certain rights and concerns of the property owners to be addressed. Ability to opt out, for a property owner to opt out. If the city's holding them liable for the conditions of the sidewalk, then they should have some say in how the use of the sidewalk is conducted, especially a business using the sidewalks outside of their own business. Furthermore, allow a district that majority vote to say we don't want vending in this district specifically to be able to opt out. We just like to see those kind of amendments, but the framework is excellent, and we thank you for that effort.
Thank you. Next speaker. And after you, we'll have Evan Kleiman, Jessica Law, Merced Sanchez. Yes, sir.
Hello, Mr. President and fellow City Council members. My name is Robert Newman, Vice President of Administration of the Downtown Los Angeles Neighbor Council. We submitted a general comment community impact statement, and I just wanted to underscore the most important part of our mention in that community impact statement, which is enforcement, which is of much concern to many, many people here. And so I just wanted to underscore that enforcement is very, very important from the zoning.
Can we hold this time? Did you, community impact statement from where?
Downtown Los Angeles Neighbor Council.
Oh, really? Then I have to have you come forward. Let him in. Sure. And I'm sorry no one notified me. I'm glad that the staff caught you say that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President and fellow council members. Again, Robert Newman, Vice President Administration, Downtown Los Angeles Neighbor Council. We submitted a general comment, community impact statement, and I wanted to underscore just the biggest mention in a community impact statement, which is of concern to many people here, is enforcement. Enforcement from the zoning, the placement, the operation, and in particular, those that are serving food. Very, very important that the LA County Health Department is involved with those vendors from start to finish. And so we just wanted to make sure, that, like I said, that enforcement is a top priority and of great emphasis. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
If you could just go the other way. Go right ahead. Yes.
Good morning, council members. My name is Evan Kleiman. I come to you as a member of the Los Angeles Food Policy Council. I'm a native Angelina, currently living in Mid-City. I'm a cook, former restaurateur, and most importantly, an eater. For details regarding the current policy proposal, it's important that the policy is citywide, not zones. Think access, not destination. It's important that vendors that the permit process is accessible and affordable for vendors, and the requirement of obtaining permission from businesses should really be considered carefully. Private businesses shouldn't have veto power over sidewalks. Some vendors are currently extorted to pay rent for use of sidewalks, and this could open up the exploitation. Finally, more emotionally, right now, the thought that a vendor selling a bacon-wrapped hot dog could be deported is just a little bit too much to bear.
Thank you. Next speaker, please identify yourself.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Mercedes Sánchez y soy vendedora ambulante. Y estoy aquí para pedir una vez más su voto para la legalización de la venta ambulante.
Good morning. My name is Mercedes Sanchez, and I'm a street vendor. I'm here to request one more time your vote in favor of legalizing street vending.
Hemos esperado por 3 largos años, tiempo en el cual nos dimos a la tarea de estudiar la política que ustedes han propuesto.
We have been waiting 3 long years. During the time, we took it upon ourselves to study the policy that you are proposing.
Pero también tenemos puntos en los que no estamos de acuerdo.
But we also have certain points that we don't agree with.
Porque tenemos la seguridad que esto no será buena idea.
Because we have the assurance that this is not going to be a good idea.
Y que fracasará esta política.
And that this policy is going to fail.
Ustedes proponen 2 vendedores por bloque.
You are proposing 2 street vendors
en
per
el área
block.
Que yo vendo, en el distrito de La Piñata, somos alrededor de 60 o más vendedores.
In the area where I am currently a street vendor, and that's the area where the piñatas are sold, we're currently, 60 street vendors.
La mayoría nos quedaríamos sin trabajo. Además,
so if that happens and you only approve 2 street vendors per block, then the majority of us are going to stay without.
Que si ustedes permiten que los dueños de negocios le pidamos permiso,
we're going to stay without our business. No se preocupe. And if you allow the businesses for us to ask permission to the small businesses, then we're also not going to, it's going to be denied.
Rápido, estamos a exposición de los dueños de negocios que nos están
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Your time has expired. Thank you. Mr. Krikorian? Well, wait. Okay, if we could keep it down.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is one woman in the audience who's perpetually shouting out, even while speakers are speaking. It's one thing for people to clap in between speakers, but while members of the public are trying to speak, I would ask that she be instructed to keep quiet or leave this meeting.
Is that Ms. McAllister? So, Ms. McAllister, you're going to have to be quiet when the other people are speaking. We let you speak. I told them to let you speak without hissing and booing, and they did that. So one more outburst by you, and you'll be removed from the chambers. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Lal, and I represent the Central Cities Association. First and foremost, I'd like to start by thanking Council Members Price and Buscaino for putting forth such a thoughtful vending framework. It includes some necessary and smart provisions like requiring property owner or business owner consent. However, we believe there's still some work to be done. In order to move forward, CCA recommends that the decriminalization effort move forward separately from the vending ordinance program. CCA supports decriminalization and believes that the ordinance can be brought forth quickly and approved while the details of the vending program are still further developed. Within the vending program, we need to acknowledge that specific areas of the city may not be conducive to vending or have different requirements. A one-size-fits-all program will not be the most effective. We believe there should be a thoughtful and flexible process for communities to be able to weigh in for what suits them and what serves their unique needs.
Thank you. Okay, I'll take one more speaker. Ann Job, are you here? Ann Job? Ann Job. Calling once, twice. Okay. Anna Maria Gill. No, Ann, I see you. I'll let you both. Come on. Come on.
Thank you. Actually, I did speak a little bit on this. I'm counting on you, like we always do, to take a holistic view of this, and I trust that you will do that. That one thing does not fit all, one size does not fit all, I'm sure of that. But the big thing is that you've decriminalized it and you've protected us from people who would do us harm.
Thank you. Ms. Gill? This will be the last speaker.
Good morning.
Morning.
Please, I need translation.
Can we get... here she comes. Go right ahead.
Buenos días, señor presidente, y buenos días a todos los miembros del Consejo de Los Ángeles.
Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning to the rest of the honorable council members.
Mi nombre es Ana María Gil, vengo del Valle de San Fernando.
My name is Ana Maria Gil, and I'm coming from the San Fernando Valley.
Muchas familias vivimos de la venta ambulante porque es difícil conseguir un trabajo en estos tiempos.
A lot of us families depend on street vending because during these times, to support our families, because during these times it's very difficult to get a job.
Gracias a todos por liderar por nuestra propuesta.
Thank you all for supporting our proposal and for being leaders in favor of our proposal.
Les pedimos justicia para todos que haya oportunidades equitativas para todos los vendedores ambulantes.
What we ask for fairness and for it to be equal across for all the street vendors, whatever is approved.
No es justo que se nos relacione con la prostitución que hay en la calle.
And it is not fair for people to compare us to the prostitution activity that currently takes place on the streets.
Yo sé que sí hay áreas que está de esas personas trabajando eso, pero
I know that there are certain areas in certain communities where you have people who are doing that type of activity, but
podemos trabajar en esos puntos para regularizar las áreas.
But we can work more in these points and these details in order to regulate those certain areas.
La comunidad nos quiere porque nos compran nuestros productos.
The community is in favor of us because they purchase our products and our services, food.
Muchas gracias. Somos muchas familias que nos vamos a beneficiar de esta propuesta.
Thank you very much. A lot of families will benefit if you approve this proposal.
Thank you. And that concludes. Can we keep it down now, please? Keep it down. Okay, that concludes general public comment on this item. So I'm going to call on, in this order, Mr. Price, Mr. Huizar, Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today is the result of 3+ years of countless hearings, both here and in the community, meetings with departments, advocates, and businesses. First of all, I want to thank my colleagues, Councilman Huizar, Councilman Buscaino, who worked closely with my office as we have developed this framework. And I especially want to thank everyone in the community who participated in this process, the Street Vendor Coalition, CCA, city departments, the bids. You all have provided invaluable input. And I hope that you can see that what's before the council today is a fair and balanced policy that has taken all sides into consideration. So while we're advocating for permit vending citywide, we also limit the amount of vending to 2 per block and require that the adjacent property owner or business owner give consent. We know that one size does not fit all, so we've built in mechanisms to have more or less restrictive vending zones. Colleagues, I know some of you are apprehensive about this policy, that you like a district model. But we've tried that before, and it's failed. I believe we need to learn from our history and try a different approach this time. Street vendors are an integral part of our city. People know LA's famous bacon-wrapped hot dogs, and there's sometimes lines around the block for an elote. We've been ignoring these businesses for too long. We need to bring the vendors out of the shadows and allow them to be a part of the formal economy, paying their share of taxes, permit fees, all of which can be put back into enforcement. These are micro-entrepreneurs who are simply trying to put food on the table and provide for themselves and their families. I think it's about time that we stop criminalizing them and start allowing them to conduct their business lawfully. In the end, it's going to benefit not only the vendors, but the residents, the businesses, and the city of LA. It's the fair and the right thing to do. Colleagues, I ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Huizar.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been some time since Mr. Price and myself put forward the motion to regulate our street vendors in the city of Los Angeles and decriminalize this activity that is accepted at every other major city in the United States. I think these other cities have understood that everybody wins when you have a regulatory system that allows for street vending and allows the consumer to know what they are consuming, because the regulatory system that we have right now is simply not working. It's chaotic. For the city, we spend valuable resources trying to prosecute some of these vendors who are just trying to make a living. We also have over-concentration of street vending, as heard from some of the speakers as well. We don't know where and when street vending may be allowed. For the vendors, we know that if we have a regulatory system, that they will be able to provide for their families and continue in something that they is probably their only means of providing for their family. So everybody wins under a regulatory system. And what's happened in the history of the city in attempting to do this, as Mr. Price mentioned, we've tried districts that simply didn't work. But this is an interesting time for us when we look at this issue, because the street vendors themselves are coming to us and asking us to regulate them. That's rare. And in the past, it's been the city that has attempted to regulate, but the vendors didn't want to be regulated. So I think we should take this opportunity as a city and come up with some regulations that make sense for, like I said, so that everybody can win. I think the amendments that were proposed today are good to look at. We should examine all possibilities. We should look at what works and what doesn't work. The amendments as proposed are things that we should examine. I think we should look at that and see what works. But at the end of the day, as we look at the regulatory system, we have to ask ourselves, do we want to continue in the path that we have now, continue persecution of vendors, residents and businesses fighting and going back and forth with vendors, and us putting our resources in places that we could probably put our resources in other things that have a more impact in our city? Or do we want a regulatory system where everybody will win? So I'd like to last and also thank Mr. Buscaino for his work on this and creating a framework along with Mr. Price on something that we could move forward with. It's been a long time coming. We've had a number of meetings on this, but I think this framework finally gives us something we could work with and move forward with. So thank you, Mr. Buscaino, Mr. Price. I ask that we move forward and take up those amendments in committee, see what works and what doesn't work. And last but not least, I'd like to add that we also examine our public spaces and not just look at sidewalks, for example, parklets and other areas that we've created as public spaces. As the city moves toward creating more communal areas and active streets, we should look at these areas and not just limit this to sidewalks. And then if the city attorney could examine that as we move forward as well. Thank you.
Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. President. I, too, want to acknowledge Mr. Price and Mr. Huizar for their leadership and partnership on this issue. I also want to recognize the 23 neighborhood councils that have weighed in on this matter before us. I also want to thank and praise both the business community and the vending advocates who helped craft this framework of a policy that's before us as well, and members of my committee at Public Works, Ms. Martinez, Mr. O'Farrell, Mr. Price, and Mr. Rue, all of the most complex issues that I have to deal with as a chairman of Public Works involve sidewalks, whether it's sidewalk repair, homeless encampments, and vending, all have to do with regulating our most accessible and abundant public space, our sidewalks. And there are many competing demands for our sidewalks, including bus shelters, sidewalk dining, bike share kiosks, trash cans, and vending. And while most other cities have managed to balance all of these needs, Los Angeles is the only major city in this country that prohibits vending, every type of vending, 24 hours a day throughout the entire city of approximately 11,000 miles of sidewalks. And the core question the council must answer is whether vending poses a threat so grave to public health and safety and welfare that is it worth continuing to expand limited police resources, enforcing a citywide ban on all sidewalks at all times. We believe that this is not the case. And with thousands of vendors that spread throughout 469 square mile city, it's no wonder that enforcement is inconsistent and ineffective. Residents of Los Angeles clearly don't agree with this heavy-handed approach because vendors wouldn't be out there if they didn't have customers. And we know that there's a lot of folks in this city that value our food culture. I, for one, as a senior lead officer, was tasked with addressing the vending issue in my basic car area. And I can tell you, based on my experience, arresting vendors clearly did not work. And if we as a council truly believe this activity was such a nuisance, then we would make it illegal for people to purchase from vendors. But before you today is a framework that moves away from a broken citywide ban and instead allows us to designate specific areas where vending is prohibited, allowing for more targeted enforcement in areas where unique circumstances don't allow vending in a safe manner, and where we propose to allow vending, it won't be unlimited and it won't be done by right. And we will still require vendors to obtain a city permit, which will not be issued without the consent of the adjacent property owner or business owner, and other requirements like liability insurance and a county health permit. We also know that the full cost recovery, based on the report before you and the recommendation, will be dedicated to enforcement, education, and permitting. So what we have before us, I truly feel, is a reasonable approach supported by both the LA Times and the Daily News. We all want safe streets. We want equal opportunity for all, particularly those who are often overshadowed, like our lower income and immigrant populations. We want laws that make sense and that are enforceable. And as Mr. Weezar said, what we have before us clearly doesn't work. This is an underground economy that needs to be regulated, and it's a free-for-all right now in the city of Los Angeles. And as for President Trump, if we want to be an inclusive city and celebrate diversity and the contributions that immigrants make to this city, we can't simply talk about opposing Trump's policies or nominees. We need to take serious actions like this one before us to send a message to our president that we are a city of immigrants, we embrace immigrants that contribute not only to our economy, but also want to provide for their family. And I'll end with this, if I may, Mr. President. Gabby Medina, one of my field deputies, 25 years ago, sat down with her family, and they were struggling financially. And the Medina family could have opted for government assistance or to vend food in their neighborhood, to put food on their table. 25 years ago, it was Gabby and her mom who went door to door selling papusas in her neighborhood in South Los Angeles. And I talked to Gabby, and I see the faces here today in support of this ordinance. That today we stand with you. We want you to be successful. We want you to be a part of our local economy. And that this is an equity issue. That if we embrace a startup business to come in the city, whether it's a tech industry or not, we should also embrace those who want to sell food or items and ensure that we have regulations in place that does have enforcement attached to it. Thank you.
Councilmember Krikorian.
No, I'm.
Councilmember Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I really want to thank the leadership, your leadership, Councilmember Huizar, Price, and Buscaino for your tremendous work on this effort. And street vending and vendors have been a part of the fabric of Los Angeles for generations, many of whom, like my parents, picked up their families and fled their countries of origin in search of opportunity, a leg up and a better life for their children. And they've been an essential to the cultural diversity and economic growth of our city. Today's vote is more than a system of permitting and enforcement. It's an opportunity to bring thousands of Angelinos out of the shadows and provide legal certainty and safeguards for most of our most vulnerable residents. Given the new administration's recent behavior and the increasingly real expectation that President Trump might expand the types of crimes targeted for deportation, I introduced an amendment requesting that the city attorney do all in his power to include a provision on amnesty, thereby vacating misdemeanor records that have been applied to street vendors in the past. In this time of political turmoil, it is crucial that we continue to protect the diversity that all Angelinos benefit from. This is a big step in the right direction, and colleagues, I thank you for your time and urge you for your aye vote.
Councilmember Cedillo.
Colleagues, I applaud your effort. Mr. Huizar, Mr. Price, Mr. Buscaino. This is a very vexing and challenging problem for us, but is also a problem that requires urgent action. Let me suggest that we embrace the proposal by the CCA and that we bifurcate the question of amnesty, and that we put that at the top of the agenda. We put that at the top of the agenda because our nation is in crisis. There is chaos throughout our nation in all corners. I think about those who wanted to travel this weekend, those who were going to go visit family or friends, or maybe take a vacation or had a business trip, and the chaos they confronted at the airports, let alone those who were targeted by a misguided policy coming from the Trump administration. There is a sense of urgency for amnesty today. When the president appoints none other than Stephen Bannon, a proud racist, a proud white supremacist, to Security Council, Senator Sessions for Attorney General, takes advice from Chris Korbach, who has spent his entire adult life trying to make life miserable for immigrants, and then the acting changes that took place this morning for ICE, bringing forth not a policy person, but a person focused exclusively on enforcement. We are in danger of worksite raids, raids in neighborhoods, raids in our community. That is not hyperbole, but that is simply the reality we are confronted with today. And so let me argue first for the question of amnesty, and not just for misdemeanors, as I have for the last couple years. I thank the city attorney for their tolerance. If I was overly aggressive, not fully respectful, I apologize. But it is exactly this circumstance and this situation that I was trying to avoid. We cannot put in peril large amounts of members of our community and subject them to possible deportation with this policy. And so again, I embrace and suggest we embrace the bifurcation, move amnesty to the top of the agenda, address questions of misdemeanors today and looking backward, address questions of infractions today and looking backward. You are right. We have a need for some regulatory scheme, and we should construct that. We should do so in a thoughtful way, and you have made big steps forward. But at this very moment, when our nation is encumbered by recklessness coming out of the White House and out of Washington, D.C., we must do all that we can to protect community. There have been incredible marches in this city, an incredible hearing last week of our Immigration Committee, and I thank you, Mr. President, for having the courage and the leadership to convene us. But today we are in crisis, and we must be compelled to move forward on the question of amnesty. Second, let me talk about the question of legalization. I am a proponent of legalization. Some may have heard that I worked on a question of a driver's license for immigrant motorists for some time. I believe that our laws should be complied with, but they have to be laws that can be complied with, that people have an opportunity and a real ability to comply with. So we believe in the rule of law, and when we look at the question of driver's licenses, we see how an effective program works. We have thoughtful legislation where all stakeholders participated. We have leadership at the highest level. We had an investment of $40 million to launch the program. We hired 1,000 people to execute it, in addition to the entire infrastructure and workforce of the California Department of Motor Vehicles. And that is a successful program. How do we know? Because 850,000 new motorists of California now get up and drive calmly in accordance with the law, not looking over their shoulders, and they do so in compliance with the law. They buy insurance, and our highways are safer, and our nation and our state is stronger and better for that. Let's look to that example for us as we go forward on legalization. Keep in mind, we have set minimum standards to protect the public, but we don't tell the motorists what cars to buy, what color, what price, where to get them. We have flexibility that's responsive to each individual motorist, and yet we have minimum standards for the state. Let's look at our housing. In our housing, we want to have minimum standards. Building and safety is charged to do that. But we don't say one size fits all. We don't say all of you have to live in a Craftsman or in a mid-century design building, or that you have to live in an apartment, or that you must live in a single unit. We have flexibility. We allow the locals to have input on the design. Not one size fits all. We have HPOZs, we have interim control ordinances, we have the general plan, and we have by right. What I'm suggesting, colleagues, is that we have to think about minimum standards, at the same time be open to local concerns. So for some areas, I respect if you say you need 2 per block, that's the maximum. But that's not my district. I have 80 vendors that we're working with on 7th and Alvarado. And I have developers that want those vendors there, that see them as part of the scheme of us growing that region, see the economic activity, see the entrepreneurship, and see the possibilities. See the possibilities of us growing the city. Mr. President, I'm going to wrap up my comments because I think I've made my point. We want amnesty, and we want it now, and we want it looking backward in every instance. And we want legalization. We want legalization because the immigrants that come here are responsible, they're entrepreneurial, they want to comply with the law, but they need that opportunity to do so. And so I applaud my colleagues for beginning this discussion, and I call upon the city attorney to take these comments and responding to the initiative of this council, and keep in mind, 1, the question of amnesty, looking backward for all infractions and misdemeanors, and 2, a legalization that is flexible for each and every district. I thank you, colleagues.
Mr. Blumenfield.
First, join my colleagues in praising Mr. Price and Weezar for spending so much time, and so many people here who have spent the time to move this forward. It is time that we do come forward with sensible regulations. I do have some questions. I didn't have the benefit of being on the committee, so I wanted to bring staff to the table to ask a few questions, because while I support moving this recommendation forward and to creating the concept of it, I wanted to understand a little bit more about some of the details. You get a couple different issues. I know time is limited, but opting out with the special district or creating the special district, I understand you need 20% of the signatures to initiate that process. Then it has to be for health and safety. Who decides whether or not a group can opt in or opt out, and how big or small can those districts be? Can it be just in front of one, a special district in front of one building? Can it be an entire region? How would that work?
Felipe Chavez with the CLA's office. According to the proposal before you today, the proposal gives the CLA and the CAO an instruction to come back with the criteria to develop districts and to develop the opportunity to develop a district with a criteria that is different from the citywide process.
So it's not determined in what we're voting on, because to me it's a really important question of what that size looks like and how that process works, and whether this council has carte blanche on that, or whether there are certain hurdles that have to be met.
That's correct. It has not been determined. That is one of the things that we'll be reporting back on.
So that's going to come back to the committee and to this council before we determine that.
Correct.
Okay. Another issue that is unclear to me, the issue of permission by the adjacent property owner. How exactly does that work? Does the property owner actually decide on the individual, or is it yes, yay or nay to the issue of vending in front of their property?
Again, that's also one of the issues that we'll be exploring. But in some cities that we looked at, as part of the permit process, they require to bring a letter from the business that's adjacent to the placement of the vending.
And how do we, and as this goes forward, I want to make sure how do we prevent the vendors from being exploited potentially by the property owners, or vice versa, extorted, in the sense that if you can, I'm assuming it's illegal to require for a property owner to ask for money in order to allow that person to be there. Is that correct?
Correct.
So that's illegal. What about choosing who that vendor is? I mean, obviously there would be discrimination issues if someone says, well, I want to have, the most obvious example, I want to have a person of this race but not of this race vending. Or maybe they do it through subtext of, I want to have a hot dog but not a churro, or something like that. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen, and how do we prevent the liability which may come to the city if and when that does happen?
Our office has been working with the city attorney, the Public Works Department, the LAPD, and the county health department and other city departments as well. And we have been looking at these issues. We haven't had instruction from the council to actually go back and develop a program. But with your instructions today, we'll come back with options for you to decide on what criteria you would need to issue a permit. One of the things that we already know would be required is that if you want to sell food, for example, we would require you to have a permit from the health department. So by doing that, you would already meet the requirements from the health department. Where the city would come in is issuing the placement and the location for the cart itself.
Right.
So we would have to develop criteria for that as well.
To develop criteria, but we also have to develop that process where that property owner, in effect, has a veto power over, whether they're street vending, and in some cases, who's street vending. And I just want to make sure that we're very careful about this, and I know that we will be, but the answers aren't contained in what we're voting on here today.
That is
so
correct.
I want to make sure that those answers are forthcoming in this process, because I do see potential for exploitation, potential for discrimination, and potential for liability on the city's part, which I want to make sure that we're very clear that we can avoid.
We will address that.
And then the other issue that's a little unclear to me is the enforcement. We've talked about the decriminalization, which I think is important for all of us in the sense that we don't want to see people at risk for deportation over vending. We're going to lead in that regard. But how does this process work? We haven't, and will it require, the goal of all this is it's happening, it'll be less chaotic if we can regulate it in a positive way, and ultimately that will lead to better enforcement. But at the moment, it's illegal everywhere, and it takes place everywhere, so enforcement isn't working. So then the question is, how will it work when it's more regulated? Will it require more resources to enforce?
I'm going to defer that question to the city attorney and the police department. I believe there are representatives here today.
Yeah, good afternoon. For LAPD, again, we're hoping that Bureau of Street Services, the last time we talked and this was brought forward in the committee, Bureau of Street Services was going to be the primary lead for us. However, I do think it's important, too, to look back historically at where we are. I know that a big discussion about decriminalization did do a run on what we had as far as citations issued in 2016, and we had a total of 116 that were issued. And again, that clearly demonstrates that the enforcement component is not something that LAPD is truly pushing. For 116 out of the thousands of individuals that are involved in street vending, I think that's a very good reflection. Those are probably only the most chronic ones where there was issues related in and around the environment that they were dealing with. When you look at it also from a perspective as far as the decriminalization and the immigration or the deportation, again, that is something that Chief Beck and the LAPD, that is something that we are, as an organization, not going to be involved in. We are going to continue to stand by our Special Order Number 40, and Chief Beck has made it very clear that federal law enforcement and immigration is not going to be the role of LAPD. The one thing I do think when we look at the enforcement component of this is that there are, without question, some opportunities. I think there's opportunities in regards to the standardization of the people that are involved in the vending, making sure that very similar to alcohol ABC type licensing situations where there's a high educational component that will help them self-police, help them understand where and when they can operate and how that operation and best practices should be done. Also, with that is going to be the relationships that's going to be built with the business, hopefully, and also built with the vendors. That's going to be something that, again, the educational component, similar to what we're doing with 8502 right now and 5611, the educational component to adhere people.
And I guess when we look at the enforcement, I know my time is limited here, I want to make sure we're also looking not just at the vendors themselves, but there are these larger these larger organizations that are organizing the vendors, that are driving folks, that have some culpability in terms of if they're promoting things that are outside of our regulation. And because I'd much rather see enforcement on those larger companies than on the folks who are on the street in the vending themselves. And I want to make sure that as we look at the enforcement, we're casting, since we're creating a regulatory structure, we're casting a wider net at not just the vendors themselves, but the support network of those.
Yeah, completely agree, because again, I think that's what we are seeing is that a lot of the vendors are not strictly independents, but it's what you also discussed is that a lot of them are in the umbrellas of other people and they are working for other people. So I think, again, as part of that relationship building component, that is going to be the component that has to be strengthened before the enforcement and the education component gets put into place. The one big thing also I think it's important to think about is the threats related to this, and there are some threats as far as for enforcement. Obviously, the personnel and the resources, and I'll have Bureau of Street Services talk in a second about what their plan and strategies are because they will be the primary. But for us, I think it's important when we look historically back, and I brought this up before, sometimes best intentions have the most unforeseen circumstances, and for us, I look at 4118D, which was the erection of tents during daytime hour or during the evening hours, and they were to collapse. That caused a lot of problems when we tried to do the enforcement component to get those tents down, which in turn led to a lot of litigation and legal issues for the department, and really made it hard for us to operate and to do it. So hopefully with the strategies that are going to come out of the council, many of these issues will be addressed. And also I think it's important when you talk about vending is also for us from the enforcement side or the law enforcement side is also the protection of the vendors themselves. Because as was mentioned, many of the vendors, anecdotally anyway, without question are extorted or are taxed by gangs that are involved in the area. So again, the complexity of this issue is very similar to a lot of the other complex issues that we were dealing with, and there are a lot of opportunities, but there's also many, many threats related to this. And with that, Bureau of Street Services.
Good afternoon, Gary Harris, Bureau of Street Services. Similar to the LAPD, this has not been a primary function for street services enforcement. In the last fiscal year, there were approximately 200 citations for illegal vending. But in addition to illegal vending, there are 106 other sections of the municipal code that the Street Services Enforcement Division is primarily responsible for. So obviously our resources would be stretched thin to take on this new program without adding new resources specifically for this. And it would most likely, depending on the parameters of what is established, be significant in the number of resources. But we are working closely with the city attorney, the CLA, the CAO, to determine the complete parameters of the new program. Things such as the hours of operation, the days of operations, the amount of the types of vendors and amount of vendors that are going to be allowed in the various areas will all be factors that we have to look at in establishing what will be a program for significant enforcement. Also taking into account that we would now become the first responder for these types of complaints, relieving LAPD of these initial complaints when they're specifically for street vending. So the short answer is yes, there would be a significant increase in resources needed for the Bureau of Street Services to perform this function.
I guess, respecting the time, I'll just end with a word. I mean, I appreciate that. I don't know that we're going to be able to, I know the motion calls for cost recovery, but it sounds like the actual cost may be a little bit more than that. I want to support moving this forward because this is a major step forward, and we do need to regulate this. There's still a lot of the concept that needs to be worked out. So I look forward to seeing what comes back from the city attorney. And then the other reality is whatever we do is going to take a lot of tweaks from this body to make laws and deal with the issues as they come. So thank you.
Okay. So now, Mr. Koretz, have we worked out, Mr. Koretz, we're fine?
You're fine.
All right. So thanks. I want to thank everybody. Mr. City Attorney, it's my understanding in order to move this forward, we're going to have to break this down into 3 votes. If I could have you explain it.
Yes.
Mr. Huizar?
Clarify that my suggestion that as we talk about street vending and sidewalk vending, that we're talking about public spaces and such as parklets. The Department of Transportation, as you know, we're promoting more walkable streets, more livable streets, and if we confine the policy just on the literal meaning of a sidewalk, it's going to prohibit us from continue to expand those walkable, livable streets. So does that require a motion, or do you think that is enough direction to our CLA if the council agrees and the city attorney? Okay, well, I'll just, if we could suggest that and just make sure that that's the intent of where, yeah, okay, thank you. It's in the amendment?
City-owned property is in the amendment.
I got it, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Mr. Cedillo, this is a mistake on your part, or?
I just wanted to clarify the question you had asked me. We have no interest in bifurcating the motions, but we're simply...
Well, I think we'll get the vote done.
Yes.
We'll deliver it. Just follow me on this one.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So, Mr. City Attorney,
Yes.
go through the instructions.
Sure. So we're going to have 3 votes. The first vote is on the amending motion 30A, which was posted and circulated. Then, if that passes, we will have...
Well, why don't we vote on this? Okay. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes, 1 no.
Now.
So what we have before us now is the motion as amended, and we want to bifurcate that vote. First will be a vote on recommendation 2A(i), which is to present an ordinance to immediately decriminalize violations at LAMC. We'll vote on the rest.
Now we will vote on that. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
12 ayes, 1 no.
Now the remaining vote.
Now the remaining.
Hold tight. Wait. Please. We're not done. Just chill, relax. Yes.
And so now the remaining vote on the rest of the motion as amended.
Okay, now we're voting on the rest of the motion as amended. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes, 2
Now you
noes.
can do that. All right.
Okay. For members of the audience who wish to leave now, we have to continue with our meeting. If I can ask you to do it quietly, I would really appreciate it. Si gustan ya irse, por favor, calladitos, porque tenemos que seguir con nuestra junta. Muchísimas gracias por estar aquí. Members of the audience, if I can please have you exit the council chambers as quickly as possible. We need to resume with our meeting. Miss City Clerk, we're going to move on to item 27 for Mr. Weezer.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. The city of Los Angeles should be transparent in all aspects of the business we do, and particularly when it comes to the disposal of our public property. A lot of vacations come through council to vacate public property for private use, and sometimes when I first, let me roll back and say, when I first got elected, there were items before this agenda for us to vacate certain public property for private use without us really, in my view, vetting it at this area, which is where the public gets to see it. So we have to ensure that we have all processes and procedures in place, that we are as transparent about that. And quite frankly, I'm not a fan of vacating our public property for private use, and that should have a thorough vetting. The motion before us is a report from Public Works, and I want to thank Buscaino for working on this, that will make it a department procedure to simply put in the vacation of an alley or street, as opposed to the council initiating that review. It's eliminating an additional step, but I just want to ensure that our council offices, that we are aware which initiations are moving through. So I would like to ask for a friendly amendment to ensure that the Bureau of Engineering notify the council office when a vacation application is filed in their district. We should be made immediately aware of the filing, since these public rights-of-way proceedings can have community impacts. If that would be a friendly amendment to this, I don't know who we make it. It's not a motion.
Sir, we
If I
need
could
a
have a
second
second
on
on
your-
that emotion.
Yeah, we need a second on your amending motion, members.
Mr. Krikorian?
Mr. Gregorian
Will
will
second.
second your amending motion. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. So that is to simply notify the council offices when the Bureau of Engineering initiates a procedure or a filing on a street and or alley or any public vacation of any public property. Great. Thank you.
So let's go ahead and take up item number 27 as amended, members. Let's open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Okay, item passes. Madam Clerk, let's move on to item 43 for Mr. Rue. Mr. Rue, item 43.
Is it a public comment first?
Do you want to open up? You want me to go to
Yes.
cards?
Public comment first.
Okay. First speaker is Joanne Kim on item 43, followed by Carmen Maestas and Ernest Yoshikawa. You can please get behind Ms. Kim.
Okay.
Good afternoon, ma'am. You're speaking on item 43. Go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Joanne Kim, and I'm a resident of Koreatown and a representative of Koreatown Youth and Community Center. I'm also an owner of a condominium unit in Koreatown near 8th Street and South Manhattan Place for 7 years now. Story Karaoke Bar located at 4001 West 6th Street should not be granted the conditional use permit to sell alcohol because their history of violations of regulations and laws since before 2013, as explained in the letter from the Los Angeles Police Department, coupled with the fact that there are so many other establishments selling alcohol around this area, made for greater nuisance and even crimes in my neighborhood. I live just 3 blocks from where the Story Karaoke Bar is located and often frequent that area to visit Madang Plaza shopping mall with my family. I'm greatly concerned about increased DUI accidents happening as well as worried about increased crimes happening in the neighborhood. I'm especially concerned that the Story Karaoke Bar will have private dining rooms since the existence of these enclosed rooms often lead to drug use.
I'm sorry, you only have a minute.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Carmen Mestas, followed by Ernest Yashiwaka. I'm sorry, Yoshikawa. Did I get that right? Okay, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Carmen Mestas. I am a resident of Koreatown. I've lived here for 25 years. I currently live 2 blocks away from this establishment at 4001 West 6th Street. As your constituent and resident, I am very concerned with the restaurant. I went to the previous hearing and was upset to hear that the 13 citations and the unchanged floor plan were not taken into consideration when the zoning committee assigned this restaurant their conditional use permit. Although it is a different renter, the owner is still the same, and she has not done anything to avoid the illicit activities to take place. As a woman living in this neighborhood that already has an overflowing amount of alcohol licenses, this makes me worry even more about my personal safety, as I am always walking by this location. I do not want my safety to be more at risk. Do we need to wait for something to happen in this location in order to act? I ask that you please reconsider and revise the conditions that were given at this location. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yoshikawa, go
Good morning,
ahead.
council members. My name is Ernie Yoshikawa. Today I speak as someone who has lived in Koreatown for 13 years, just a few blocks from the site in question, as a manager at the Koreatown Youth and Community Center working with youth for 12 years, and as a member of the Coalition to Prevent Alcohol-Related Harms in LA Metro. Having lived in Koreatown for so long, I've seen firsthand the overservice of alcohol, drug use, and prostitution that happens in businesses like this with private entertainment rooms. The gangs that run these activities and the businesses that provide a space for them benefit, while the community bears the burden of drug use, prostitution, and drunk drivers. Not too long ago, a similar business just a few blocks away, also with private rooms, called La Défense, was shut down after numerous complaints and 2 rapes. The site in question, as you may know, was cited by LAPD's Olympic Division as, quote, placing an undue hardship on the community and City of LA resources. I hope the City will support the community by refusing to allow businesses like this to continue.
Thank you so much, sir. Our last speaker is Annie Gagan. Is there someone here by that name? Annie Gagan? Are you here? It's okay. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm Annie Gagan. I'm from Hollywood. I'm CD4. And I was youth chair on Hollywood Hills West Neighborhood Council for a number of years, and anyone who's on a neighborhood council in Hollywood or attends them is very aware of all the oversaturation of alcohol in our community. I just wanted to commend and thank Councilmember Rue so much for meeting with us in person with an open heart and mind and really listening, and the people who've been working on this ordinance for so many years. And for Gilbert Moore, who comes to all of our neighborhood councils and tries to knock sense into people who have to make decisions on these alcohol issues and share his expertise and information. And he united people from the different communities across the city who are dealing with us. He called on us to come, and I'm just grateful for valuing our input, Councilmember Rue, and all of the other people like Gilbert that have been involved. And thank you for Councilmember Wesson and Harris Dawson for joining in their support of this. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Madam Clerk, that concludes public comment on this item. Mr. Rue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really want to thank members of the community for coming out and staying for 4 hours to provide testimony. I know many more of you wanted to speak, but I know we had representatives from your various organizations and neighborhoods here. So I really appreciate you guys taking initiative and caring about your neighborhood. And I really want to thank my colleagues for your time and attention on this very important public safety issue in my community. The Central Area Planning Commission inappropriately granted the conditional use permit for a full line of alcoholic beverages and private rooms to the applicant for the property on 4001 West 6th Street. The Commission approved this application despite strong objections from LAPD, nearby residents, and community leaders. This particular operator and property have a history of municipal code violations and violent crimes, including murder, assaults, numerous ABC violations, including refusal to allow an inspection and operating without an ABC license, illegal construction and use of private rooms, including an order to comply by the Department of Building and Safety. The location has been operated as a karaoke and repeatedly failed to comply with basic legal requirements. This applicant came to the commission with new operators, but offered no proof, such as a sublease, to ensure that the failures of the past would not be repeated. At the heart of the matter, the applicant's request for numerous private rooms were approved. The private rooms at this location have been abused in the past and hid from public view, and promoting illegal behavior. The Central Area Planning Commission granted 4 private rooms and 5 additional private rooms that are now designated as storage and office space. And I ask you, what restaurant would set aside 2/3 of its commercial space for dry storage and a chef's office? Many of these private rooms were illegally constructed in the first place, and an issue that was not properly reviewed by the Commission. The site is also next to a residential neighborhood, and the Commission failed to address the important fact that in the approval of the hours of this operation, the Commission approved midnight from Sunday through Wednesday and 2 a.m. Thursday through Saturday. This part of my district should be held in the same standards we expect in Larchmont, Hancock Park, or any other community. And to allow for an exception here is completely unacceptable and unfair. The applicant has continually misrepresented the facts, saying one thing in public and another in private. It is unacceptable to reward bad behavior. I think you need to prove yourself and then be rewarded appropriately. But instead not to show consistent disregard for the rules and regulations and then be rewarded with the CUP that fails to contain restrictions to prevent the mistakes of the past. I very much welcome a restaurant in this location, and a modified conditions of approval could ensure such use. Now, before I close, I want to call up Sergeant Vincent to the table to give us an assessment of this location.
Welcome, Sergeant. Don't mind the mess on the table.
My name is Sergeant Julia Vincent. I've been working LAPD Olympic Vice since 2013. This business was purchased by the applicant in September 2009. Prior to that, the previous operation was problematic. From 2007 to 2010, multiple violations occurred in regards to city planning conditions and Department of Building and Safety codes. During that same time, multiple bar girls have been arrested, and a murder occurred in June 2009. More recently, from June 2013 to April 2016, the LAPD, Olympic Area Vice, and ABC has conducted numerous investigations at the location. That includes ABC violations, Department of City Planning conditions, narcotic arrests, refusal to allow inspections, and after-hours arrests, meaning the business was open and serving alcohol after the 2 o'clock state law. The ABC license has been suspended with this owner 3 times while the applicant has had control of the location. The license was suspended for 15 days in May 2012, 15 days in January 2014, and 20 days in August of 2014. ABC is currently waiting for the location to open so they can serve another suspension of 20 days. Regarding the private rooms, unfortunately, in Olympic area, we have 53 karaoke locations. I have personally read and reviewed and investigated numerous numerous rapes and sexual batteries that occur in these private dining rooms. This applicant currently owns another business in Koreatown, which was also cited recently on January 21st, 2017 for serving alcohol without a conditional use permit. And he also owned another business in Koreatown that was shut down by Olympic Vice. Based on the results of the applicant's past and current history and the inability to operate his business within the conditions set forth by the LA Department of City Planning, ABC, the State of California Business Profession Codes, the State of California Labor Code, the Olympic area supports Council District 4 in their decision of Section 245 to protect the citizens and the surrounding community which we serve.
Thank you, Sergeant. At this time, I'd like to request an aye vote to assert jurisdiction and request my motion be amended to refer the matter to Plum Committee to consider all of the circumstances and revise the conditions of approval.
Okay, second your amendment, sir.
And
That's it?
take a vote.
Okay, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, that item passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, everybody from the community, for being here to the end. Please go outside and join the festivities. Have some lunch.
Ma'am, can you please sit down? I have not adjourned the meeting yet. Can you please sit down? Thank you very much. We're going to move on to item 1. There's a number of cards on item 1. Madam Clerk? Okay, let's go back to item 43. There's actually 2 votes we have to take, one to assert jurisdiction and the second one on the item. Let's open the roll on the first to assert jurisdiction. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, that matters before us now. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Well done, thank you. Let's move on to item 1. The first speaker is Jacqueline Richardson on item 1 and Arnold Sachs. Ms. Richardson, are you still here? I don't see her. Arnold Sachs on item 1.
And Madam President, as the speaker works his way forward, there is a request to continue item 1I to February 21st.
Without objection, that will be the order. Go ahead, Mr. Sachs.
Thank you. Good afternoon, or good morning. Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. Inspection costs and inspection costs. Again, I bring up the point that you don't have the inspectors going around to look at affordable housing. You just lost a lawsuit for ADA compliant housing because nobody inspected the building plans. The fire department didn't inspect the construction site to find out the elevator system would be ADA compliant. And you are going around nickel and diming the constituents of the city I believe we heard in the discussion regarding street vending that you've been discussing updating that plan for 20 years. You have general plans that need to be updated in order to build affordable housing. When are you going to get into that kind of information for your constituents?
Can we have a card on 1E as well? Candace Graham. Candace Graham on item 1E.
Okay.
And hold on for just a second. Is there a person here by the name of Candid Pan?
Yep.
You filled out the card for the same item.
Okay.
I just want to make sure you know that. Okay. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Candace Graham. I'm a civil rights advocate, and as you know, the only reason I appear here is because when there's an injustice as such. I'd like to say that we have receipts for this item number 170160S4. It was paid in full. I know that there's often a misunderstanding of some sort, but this one was paid in full. Thank you so much, and here's a copy right here, anybody that would like to see it. So I'm saying that we strongly oppose this at this moment and time because it was actually a clerical error. Also, for you guys to note, and thank you guys for being so strong. I love seeing you guys today. I'm very, very proud of all the city council members. At the same point in time, Bill Huey is in the hospital fighting stage 6 or 4 cancer, just so that you can know, and he was so proud of you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's been a request to send items 45 forthwith, Ms. City Clerk. Okay. We're going to move on to, we're going to go ahead and continue item 1E for 2 weeks. That puts us at
Can we go ahead and make it 30
February
days?
14th, sir.
Can we go ahead and make it 30 days? Just
30
so we have
days.
time to
At the request of Mr. Kokorian, we will go ahead and continue item 1E for 30 days, which puts us at March 1st.
Thank you, Madam
Okay,
President.
thank you, Mr. Kokorian.
So if you can talk to my staff.
And we're going to move on to item 1F. Candy, 1F.
No, I just wanted to make you guys.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, that person's already spoken. Let's go ahead and move on to item 1J. Richard Concha, are you here for item 1J? Richard Concha. There is no one here by that name. Let's move on to the next item. Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and vote on the remaining items of item 1. Let's open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the votes.
10 ayes.
Okay. Madam Clerk, what's before us?
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Posted and adjourned. Can we go ahead and ask the members, are there any announcements, members? Any announcements? Mr. Rue?
Only announcement is Councilmember Cedillo and myself, we're having a luncheon for Lunar New Year, so please come join us. There's lots of, hopefully, sushi left.
Thank you, Mr. Rue. We're going to go ahead and move into adjourning motions. Mr. O'Farrell?
Thank you, Madam President. It is with great sadness that I ask that we adjourn today's meeting in memory of Stuart Timmons. Born January 14th, 1957 in Minneapolis, Stuart Timmons grew up in the Bay Area, which, along with New York, had long been a bastion of early gay activism. But Stuart, a UCLA journalism graduate, discovered that Los Angeles, his home for 3 decades, deserved more credit for its role in the vanguard of the gay liberation movement. Stuart Timmons was an acclaimed historian and award-winning author of The Trouble with Harry Hay, and co-author with Lillian Faderman of Gay LA, A History of Sexual Outlaws, Power Politics, and Lipstick Lesbians, which was a winner of the 2007 Lambda Literary Award for LGBT Arts and Culture. Both his writing and research have appeared in numerous literary sources such as LA Weekly, The Advocate, Frontiers, Vibe, and Spin, and his short stories have appeared in various anthologies. Stewart, a former board member and executive director of the One National Gay and Lesbian Archives, and in 2007, he was developing 3 walking tours of LGBTQ historic sites in Los Angeles, many of them in the 13th District, which I have the privilege of representing. He finished tours of downtown LA and Silver Lake, but experienced a severe stroke in January of 2008 before he could complete his West Hollywood edition. Stewart very much enjoyed being back on the scene in recent years after recovering from the stroke, and he's been in this chamber a few times since then as well. His final years were enriched by family, a dedicated group of friends, grants from the city of West Hollywood's One City, One Pride, and organizations like the Lavender Effect and One Archives that will continue to carry forth his legacy. I had the great pleasure of working with Stewart on a number of things, including the dedication of the Mattachine Steps back in Silver Lake under then City Council President Eric Garcetti, and also just his work on documenting the first, really the birthplace of the LGBT rights movement in Los Angeles, and that is the Black Cat protests of February 11th, 1967, which we're approaching the 50-year anniversary of that. So I want to say that that evening at Black Cat in Silver Lake, it's going to be a huge celebration, a reenactment of the protests from 50 years ago. Ironically enough, and Stewart and I had talked about this a lot, it all started with a New Year's kiss. On January 1st at 12 midnight, 2 men had the nerve to kiss in the Black Cat bar, which started the protests that preceded Stonewall by 2.5 years. So Stewart was a real champion of documenting Los Angeles' rich history in the LGBTQ movement. He passed away on the morning of Saturday, January 28th. He had just turned 60 on January 14th and was feeling very enthusiastic and happy for the love of his friendships in his life during his final days. Stewart is survived by his sister, Gay Timmons, his father, Samuel, a second sister, Emily Theobald, and 4 nieces, Caitlin and Madeline Franklin, and Amelia and Mariah Theobald. May Stewart rest in peace and know in spirit the debt of gratitude we all have for all that he did in keeping the LGBTQ history alive for this generation and future generations. That is a rich legacy, and we honor him for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. May
Please.
he rest in peace. Second by Mr. Bonin. Any other adjourning motions, members? Mr. Krikorian?
Thank you very much, Madam President. Members, I'd ask that the Council adjourn this meeting in memory of a great leader of the Armenian American diaspora in Southern California, Michael Minassian, who passed away on January 17th. Michael Minassian was his life story was the kind of story of contributions by immigrants and people taking refuge that is especially salient, I think, right now. He was born in 1931 in a village that was then part of the Soviet Union. His parents were Armenian genocide survivors, and he and his family left the Soviet Union after World War II when they were displaced, and they lived for a time in a temporary refugee camp in Stuttgart, West Germany, with 2,000 other displaced Armenians. In 1949, the family immigrated to the United States, and before even becoming a United States citizen, Michael Minassian joined the United States military and served it back in West Germany as a linguist in the Psychological Warfare Department for 2 years. As a result of his service to our country, he was then naturalized as a U.S. citizen. In 1961, he moved to Montebello and married the sister of his best friend from that refugee camp, Lydia Ajemian. He went on to succeed in business in the Montebello area and a number of different business endeavors, but importantly to our community, he was one of the leading voices in the creation of the Armenian Genocide Martyrs Monument in Montebello's Bicknell Park, which many of you have visited on April 24th. He was one of the founders of the creation of that monument. He paid for a lot of the expenses relating to that out of his pocket, including the cost of the freeway sign that leads people there. He organized the first first genocide commemoration march in Montebello on the 50th anniversary in 1965, and has really been a leader in recognition of the genocide and in education. He was one of the founders as well of the Armenian Mesropian School. So really a great man, a warm, giving, generous man who passed away and left us all with a great sense of loss at the age of 85. He's survived by his wife Lydia, his children Ani Gohar Minasyan, Rafi Gomitas Minasyan, and Murad Meher Minasyan of Montebello, and Vart Tamar Perumian of La Habra Heights. 6 grandchildren, and many, many friends and people who in our community who feel that they owe a great debt of gratitude to Michael Minasyan. And I ask that we adjourn in his memory. May he rest in peace.
Thank you, Mr. Krikorian. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I ask that we adjourn in memory of Francesca Di Costanzo, the mother of El Pueblo Commissioner Sal Di Costanzo, a gentle soul, a loving wife, loving mother, grandmother, aunt, very active in the Mary Star Parish in San Pedro, passed away yesterday, 85 years old. She was preceded in death by her husband, Francesco, and her sister, Michelina. She is survived by her daughter, Filomena, Peyton, and son, Sal Di Costanzo, their spouses, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Rosary and visitation will be held on Wednesday, the 1st, tomorrow at 5:30, and a visual service at 7 p.m. at McNerney's. Funeral Mass will be held on Thursday at Mary Star at 10:30, followed by burial ceremony at Green Hill Memorial Park. In lieu of flowers, the family requests that donations be made to Mary Star of the Sea High School Building Fund in her honor. Francesca Di Costanzo, may she rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buscaino. Any other adjourning motions, members? Seeing none, our meeting is adjourned. Have a good afternoon.